Coming at you live from all over Ohio. A Cleveland Browns podcast full of laughs, rants, fun, and stats. A place where all Browns fans' voices are welcome and heard. A show that aims to inform and entertain you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Barking Browns Show.
What is up? Como estas, everybody? Welcome in. It is episode 95 of the Barking Browns Show. I'm Jacob. That's Nick. We're brought to you, as always, by our friends over at Homage Apparel. NBA Jam over there. You got the NFL Jam over here. We got all kinds of great apparel for you. Your Guardians, your Ohio State, Cavs, Browns, Guardians spring ball starting up. We got all kinds of stuff. The combine is in the air. It's a Cleveland sports trifecta. Nick, how are you this evening?
You know, it's funny. I going into this show, I was thinking, last episode, it's like we're the offseason champs again. We got Bubba Ventrone. we're talking about all these good things, and I'm like, okay, well, where do we go from here, right? And then this morning, the John Johnson news breaks where the Browns are going to release him if they can't find any potential trade partners. And so not only that, then we take it a step further, and Mary Kay Cabot's reporting that the Browns will be interested in Jesse Bates. And so it's like every week, it's like the Browns are the gift that keeps on giving, man. It just never is boring. I'm so happy. I can't wait to dive into all this because you know what? We had discussed this at least a little bit before about what we thought was going to happen with John Johnson. And so it's nice, at least for me, to see that they are not wasting any time.
Yeah, some interesting things. I guarantee it's a post June 1 cut just for people that are questioning it. That's $9.75 million off the cap, but doesn't come off the cap until June 2nd. But I don't know that they'll find a trade because I just don't think people want that contract. Not that they don't want the player. He'll catch on somewhere quickly. And we'll get into that. We've got plenty to say about the John Johnson stuff. We got all kinds of things to dive in. So before we get started, I will do a quick little rundown what I've got on my notes here. We got to talk about Jakeem Grant restructured his contract. What does that mean? We got a quarterback coach hire, sort of. What does that mean? Who's Bill Musgrave? There's some coaching changes. JJ3 will be cut. We've got some stuff about defensive coaches, and we're going to dive into Andrew Berry's press conference from today, live from the scouting combine, which is one of my favorite weeks of the year as a draft junkie. We are talking free agency. We are talking the draft, but the combine is here. They are, in fact, the gift that keeps on giving. Drew is checking in. We're good to see you over there. Drew, good to see MC.
What's up, MC?
Checking in for us there. So let's start at John Johnson, man. Let's start with the news of the day that was not shocking news for anybody that pays attention. So Nick, you go for it. I know you got some thoughts on it, and I'll follow up with mine if you want to take the lead.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. I think. So I'll start off by saying it's disappointing because if you go back in our episodes, I wish I could tell you which one, but if you go back in our episodes, we were both really excited for the John Johnson edition. I think it's important to remember that when John Johnson was added here, he was coming from the best secondary in football that season with the Rams. And so there was a great reason to believe that he was going to be this game-changing Jacob, I think you mentioned it last episode that you were saying this could be one of the biggest additions that the
No, I did say that. I said that it was the biggest addition. Changed my mind.
Yeah. And so I mean, so it's disappointing that it didn't work because I do think the magnitude of the signing. I mean, John Johnson was coming off of a highly productive season. He was known for leadership. You saw on Building the Browns, he was talking about I want to be the best, and he was really excited to be a Brown when they signed him. And so I think rightfully so, we all had really high hopes for what John Johnson was going to be here. And obviously that didn't pan out. And I'm no expert. I mean, there's been a bunch of different theories floated around about why it didn't work. Maybe the Browns used him in a role that they shouldn't have. Maybe Maybe it sometimes pieces don't fit the way you think they're going to. But I think that it would be blindness to ignore that there were definitely effort issues as well. And so I think from that perspective, you just can't have that anymore on the Browns. I mean, 2023 is too important to go back after week 3 or whatever and say, what is this effort? What is going on here? You can't, it's too important. So from that perspective, I think it made sense for the Browns and John Johnson to move on. So I am glad. I will say, obviously, this was a miss from Andrew Berry. I mean, no matter how you feel about it or why, it's a miss, right? It didn't work out here. So at least Andrew Berry has left them an out to get out, because I can think of a lot of previous contracts the Browns were stuck with, and just were albatrosses over the franchise for quite a period of time. So no, it didn't work out. I am glad that Andrew Berry did take this swing. I think it was worth it. I mean, he was highly productive. We were talking about how he wore the green dot and he's this leader and he's going to help them. And obviously we saw what the communication was like in the secondary this year, where again, whoever you blame, Joe Woods, the players, trying to assess the fault there is difficult. But I'm sad it didn't work out. It sucks. It sucks that it went that way, but it definitely makes sense to move on. And so I'm really excited to talk about who the Browns could potentially replace him with.
Yeah. So I put a lot of blame on the organization, not just for the way that he was used, but just, I mean, that's what it's for. It's for the way that he was used. He's more of a box safety, and they wanted him to be a free safety. And, I don't think it was insane for them to think he could do the things they asked of him. It just didn't work. They projected him to be able to play as a deep safety with Grant Delpit kind of going back and forth in the box, out of the box. And he had done some of those things in LA. I mean, not regularly. That wasn't where he thrived. That's why it was kind of perplexing at times the way Joe Woods had used him and rolled him out, just because you look at the tape and you say, well, that's just not where he was thriving. And so I put more blame at the Browns' feet than I do at John Johnson's. And that's coming from a dude that said, hey, he's got major effort issues. I want him gone. But I wonder, where did the effort issues come from? Does it come from, some of it came from, because I think he just straight up, especially this year, I just don't think he had any desire to play for Joe Woods in the way that he was going to be. Now, I don't know if they told him, hey, we're going to use you this way, and then used him in a different way. That's something you'll never probably know until 10, 15 years after John Johnson quits playing and, that sort of thing. You find those stories down the road, but I just feel like we were shown this awesome product. You were still right to make the signing. You should not have made the signing with the intention of using him the way that you did. But I still think that he was the best safety on the market when you had a horrid secondary outside of Denzel Ward the offseason that you signed him. Because you can remember when we were going into that offseason, it was keep Myles Garrett, keep Denzel Ward, kind of keep Ronnie Harrison, everybody else can go. And they went out and they get Troy Hill, which Drew brings up as well. They go out, they get Troy Hill, and you swing for the fences and you get these players and you're like, we're going to do this. And you didn't do it right. It's a miss.
Yeah.
But as we've seen over and over again, multiple times, and Andrew Berry last year with Austin Hooper, John Johnson this year, an out after 2 years into the massive contract extensions that they signed. So, well, I'm sorry. They weren't extensions. They were just free agent contracts with Hooper and John Johnson. Why did his name just disappear from my mind all of a sudden? But you see, yeah, it's ever since Sendejo, it all went downhill when Sendejo left. That's a statement. And I think you look at these things and you're just yeah, that was just a miss. I don't know if it was a miss to sign him. It was a miss to sign him with that intention. I wish him, luck going forward. It just flat out didn't work. And, now we need to move on and figure out where we go next.
I think, what, MC brings up an interesting point here and says if Schwartz wanted him, they'd have kept him. I do find myself agreeing with that.
There were, and Andrew Berry addressed that. That is something we'll address in his conference a little bit later on.
Okay. All right. So, spoiler alert, I haven't gotten to see all the Andrew Berry comments, so it's going to be Jacob's going to inform me as well as everyone else. So I'm really excited to dive into that.
I've only watched like half of it, so some of it is stuff that I just read myself. So
it really is frustrating to me that the Browns took 2/5 of the best secondary in football, and it did not. And you already had Denzel Ward, right? And it did not manifest. It did not bear the fruit anywhere near the fruit we thought it would.
The good news is when it comes to drafting defensive backs, they've been pretty good at it.
That's true. Yes, that if there's one strength that we've seen thus far in drafting wise, it's got to be. You know what? Side note here: Greg Newsome really seems to get some type of flack just out there. I've seen a ton of it. Like some people try and knock him because he hasn't had an interception yet, and like that's apparently makes him some kind of bad player. No names, please.
Would you go here's something I'll say, and I know it's not zero. I know it's not zero when we talk about this particular player that I'm going to counterpoint the point. I know what you're talking about. Go look at Darrelle Revis and you tell me about his interception numbers, because he's getting ready to go in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know, and I'll even pull these up while we're doing this, but it's such a, how we've talked recently about sacks being kind of overblown now just because, you got the pressure metrics and things like that.
Yeah.
So you're talking with Darrelle Revis. There is one. Okay. So Revis, his interceptions were high to begin his career, 3, 5, and 6. Okay. Then one of his all-pro seasons, he was selected to an all-pro in 2009, 2010, 2011. And 2010, when he was an all-pro, he had 0 interceptions.
Huh.
0. He then has 4, 1, 2, 2, 5, 1 for the rest of his career. Because why was that? Oh, because you didn't throw at him. Interceptions in today's, that's no. That's like trying to tell me that wins are a quarterback stat that really matter. Interceptions are great.
Sure.
But if you're looking at a guy that's not getting targets because he's locking a guy down, what do you want me to do?
I can.
They're not useless. They're just overblown.
Yeah. I can understand that, as I just said, the secondary wasn't what we wanted to be. So I can understand, criticizing that, right? Because obviously the entire unit struggled more than we thought they would. But knocking Greg Newsome because he hasn't had an interception, that makes no sense to me. I don't get that. I don't understand the criticism, because when you look at how he's played individually, especially when, Greg, and so I honestly, I didn't know we were going to discuss this, but I'd honestly like to talk about it for just a second. Greg Newsome came in his rookie year and played really well on the outside. So then the Browns follow that up with drafting Emerson, which I can't blame them for. Obviously, he's a talent. Obviously, that guy's a hit, right? But they follow it up with drafting Emerson, and then they move Newsome from where he was playing really well. And so I can understand why Greg would be frustrated, because in his mind, you are playing well. You found a role. You're playing, showing out as a rookie, and what you would think would lead you to solidify your role on the team. And then they change it all up on you and ask you to move when you did nothing but honestly earn your spot. So from that perspective, at least, I could understand why Newsome's frustrated.
Well, you also got to look at the money.
Yeah.
You got to look at the money, and I can get it especially if you be honest about it and you're like straight up front and you're just like, hey man, slot corners don't make anything. And I think you're going to start to see that evolution of money spent there, because you have to have 3 corners in the NFL now. I mean, because you have to have 3 wide receivers.
Yep.
You've got to throw the ball all over the yard. And so if you want to play defense and win and play good defense, you got to stop them from throwing the ball all over the yard, because that's where we are. And I understand that he was an outside corner in 2 corner sets, and he was a slot corner in 3 corner sets. So he wasn't really demoted. I mean, necessarily, because if there was only 2 corners there, he was one of them. Obviously there were some injuries with Denzel and himself and some things like that. And I get it. And some people have suggested that he is a trade piece. And I will say about Newsome being a trade piece because they have an abundance at corners, I would not trade a corner. Not a young rookie, not a young corner on a rookie contract that has shown he can play in this league. I'm not trading him. I get it. If there's a situation for like a Jerry Jeudy to be had, okay, we can have a conversation about that, because I think he's a really good player, and you could take a strength of, potentially a position of strength and use it to help a position that's lacking. But I don't think wide receiver is a position of weakness. I think it just needs some tweaks and get a little bit more vertical and create some more separation. That's really all they need to do. But yeah, I don't know. The Newsome thing, I think he's taken a social media break, which, like, more power to him. I get that. I respect it. I barely do anything on Twitter anymore, so I apologize to people that were like, "Oh yeah, you always like do stuff on Twitter," and I'm like, I don't see the point of it. It's a cesspool, and it's cancerous, and it's dumb, and I'm not knocking anybody that likes it, but for me, it's stupid. For me, my usage.
It has a lot of rough days. I would be lying if I said it didn't. I very much that season, coming off the playoff win, was probably the most fun I've ever had on the app, and I miss it daily.
Yeah, it's not there anymore, and that's why I'm not there anymore. So we will move on. I want to talk real quick about about Jakeem Grant. That's what I have on here.
Yeah,
I want to talk about Jakeem Grant. So we've already talked here about John Johnson. So I want to talk about Jakeem Grant, because we actually had a conversation about Jakeem Grant last week on our last episode. And that's kind of why I thought it was kind of hilarious that this restructure comes out a little bit later. He ends up taking his cap down by like 1.7 million, which we talked about. His cap hit was over 3 is what it was going to be this year. And if you were to cut him, he would save a little bit over 2 million. If you had cut him before the restructure, if you'd cut him, you'd have saved, I think it was like 2.1 million or whatever. And you're looking at a guy at 30 years old, coming off a torn Achilles. He's a violent cutter. He's quick feet, changing direction. I mean, he does have good straight line speed, but it's his ability to change directions and cut and accelerate. And that's what makes him such a great returner. And that's what made him a guy that you thought could be like a gadget player, some things like that. And I was like, no, it doesn't make any sense. I will say this. Some people think this guarantees his roster spot. I think this guarantees he's in camp. Okay. I think that's what this does, because you now, don't really have trying to think of the best way to put this. You don't really have a reason to cut him before final cuts, I think, is what I'm getting at. Yeah. It's all going to be about his injury. If for some reason, a month from now, and there's videos of him running and stuff, and he looks pretty good. He looks like he's able to move around, and he's still got some of that lateral quickness, and it's going to take some time. I mean, he tore his Achilles, and he's not even at a year yet. He's not even to a calendar year yet. But I think this restructure does not guarantee a 53-man roster, but it guarantees he gets to go to camp, show that he's healthy, show that he can be the impact player that they thought they signed, and then they can go from there depending on how he looks in camp.
I like it. You know what? Because I was thinking about this, and obviously Donovan Peoples-Jones and Jerome Ford were giving you some pretty good work last year, and I just think that both Donovan and Jerome probably stand to see their roles continue to increase in the offense. So yes, you could still have them returning. You definitely could, but it probably makes more sense to just have a dedicated return guy, and just let Jerome and Donovan continue to focus on the offense. At least that's what I think makes a lot of sense. So when you can cut down Jakeem Grant's money, I think that makes it a lot more reasonable to keep him. And it sucks. It sucks for him because I mean he was a Pro Bowler. He was a second team All Pro. Just absolutely dynamic. Like we've said it a couple times. We were there in camp the day he got hurt, and it's brutal for him. So it would be really fun. I tweeted about this. It would be really great to see a comeback story in Cleveland and see him, work back from that and still be with the Browns. And I saw when Bubba Ventrone was announced that Jakeem Grant was talking on Twitter about how excited he was to play for him. And so I think that would be a great story. I'm hoping that he's able to come back like that. And like Jacob said, he's not even a year removed. So that definitely is going to be tough. But at least he has the opportunity now. I'm glad to see that for him. And we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I think there's all that. I think that's it. I think that's all there is to it. Yeah. It's good for him because I think it provides him a better opportunity to make a roster. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Drew had said that he had seen some videos of him running. I did see a little bit of that, and he did. I mean, he looked good. Obviously, how much can you tell in videos like that, and what does that mean? We don't know, but he's moving. Mm-hmm. He's moving. I want to move to Alex Van Pelt getting the quarterback job again.
Your offensive coordinator and your quarterback coach. One guy.
Yeah. So they give it back to Alex Van Pelt. They bring in Bill Musgrave. We'll kind of hit 2 for 1 here on this situation, but I think this was a missed opportunity. I'm a little disappointed. I've seen some people say they're irate and angry and furious, and I don't know why. Just because Van Pelt that's where he's excelled in the NFL, was a quarterback coach. Now, granted, Aaron Rodgers was one of the guys, but like when Van Pelt got fired in Green Bay, let go by Mike McCarthy, it's like Rodgers was furious. That was one of the things that we liked when Stefanski brought him in as the OC in his first season, was like, oh, this is a guy that Aaron Rodgers really likes. Yeah. He did a really good job with Joe Burrow in Cincy to start out his career. Or no, I'm sorry. He was there. His
Andy
rookie.
Dalton, right?
Yeah, it was Andy Dalton. But his first year in Cleveland was Burrow's rookie year. I was thinking it was the other way around. I thought, yeah.
Got it.
Just timelines mixing together in my head. But, he was a well-respected quarterback coach. So I'm not irate by any of that or anything like that. Some people are irate about Bill Musgrave. Musgrave's been in the NFL for like 20 years. The Cows offense was not good, but there were some fun things that they did do and try, and some things like that. But I'm disappointed because I think you could have brought a fresh perspective in. And I think Musgrave kind of gives you some of that, but I was thinking a fresh perspective for the quarterback. I was thinking bring in a guy. I really wanted James Urban from the Ravens, because Urban has really, really developed Lamar Jackson as a passer. I think Lamar is a 10 times better passer than when he entered the NFL. You can debate whatever you want. He is definitely a better player under Urban's tutelage. And you thought, man, we could get some of that with Watson. We could work together and go move forward. Or you could go get somebody from Watson's success when he was down in Houston, brings up a guy like Sean Ryan, and we could mess around with some of and I thought there were some opportunities for the offense to evolve. I still think the offense evolves. I do. And my big thing, I wrote this in a newsletter, a Browns mailbag for Browns Wire, where I said, we saw the offense evolving in OTAs and training camp before Watson gets suspended for 11 games. And the offense that we saw in offseason workouts in the beginning of training camp was not the offense we saw in the final 6 games. So we've already seen evidence of evolution. We have seen that there's going to be some. How much? I don't know. We'll find out. I think it was a very missed opportunity to just give Van Pelt that job back, and we'll get to Musgrave in a second, so I'll push him away for a second. But to just give, I don't think it's a bad, but here's a question, Nick. Is it what Watson wants? Because if Watson's because there's been some comments that Watson has made about Van Pelt being his guy. And if that is truly where we are, and we'll never necessarily know. Yeah. But if that's where you are, then I'm more okay with it than I was prior. If I was given that information, I'd be like, okay, I feel better about it. Mm-hmm. I don't hate it in any way, shape, or form because I think Van Pelt's a good coach. I really do. I like him. I just thought another different perspective, different style of offense could get melded in here by bringing in some different coaches. And I just think it was a missed opportunity.
I think, Jacob, you ask a good question, and that's kind of the road I was going down. I was like, well, maybe Deshaun Watson had some input here, because if there's one thing that we've seen from Deshaun in this offseason, it is that he just exudes confidence.
He does. Yeah.
That guy feeling really good about the potential of what's going on here in Cleveland.
Every day, dude. Every day there seems to be something in that regard.
Yeah, and I really haven't seen a whole lot like that from a Browns quarterback. Honestly, Baker kind of did it in more of a brash, just
I was gonna say brash.
Yeah, just more like.
And I loved him for it at the time.
Yeah. Baker was an asshole. I mean, excuse my language, but he was. He always carried that edge with him. Sorry, I'll say it more nicely. He always carried that edge with him. Deshaun is just cool, calm, confident. Yeah, it's a very different personality, a very different vibe. But just personally, So I am fine with Van Pelt being the quarterback's coach. It perplexes me that they're asking him to be the quarterback's coach and the offensive coordinator. I don't, something about that just doesn't, like, so right or wrong, all these narratives about, and I've learned to pay more attention. I want to preface this by saying I've learned to pay more attention to the narratives from our plugged in media members, because I learned a lot from the Baker Mayfield experience. So I'm trying to grow and accept more information as it comes. And so regardless of how I personally feel about Kevin Stefanski, there is just been this repeating narrative that he's doing too much. He's got too much on his plate. He's, needs more time to focus on the offense, he needs more time to focus on the team. So if that narrative is already out there, and then you're taking your offensive coordinator and you're asking him to do more, and yes, they do add Bill Musgrave. I don't feel great about that. I don't feel great about it. If we're already saying Kevin Stefanski is spread thin, why are we then spreading our offensive coordinator more thinly as well?
I will say that the first 2 seasons in Cleveland, Van Pelt was the quarterback coach as well. Yeah. So he has done it.
That's fair. You know what? I forgot about that. Well, I knew he was the quarterback's coach. I just forgot he was the offensive coordinator as well.
And then they let Drew Petzing do it last year. Yeah. And then, of course, Drew Petzing gets the OC job. Yeah, I understand that. I would bring this up that Drew brings up that Andy Dalton was a Pro Bowler under AVP. That is true. That is what I was thinking of. For some reason, I got Burrow being good and Dalton being good in my head. And Van Pelt played quarterback in the NFL. I mean, that is a thing. Not super great, but he was there. He was there. Yeah. And listen, that means he was fantastic if he was able to get to the NFL. He understands the position. I'm with you though. It just feels like a missed opportunity. I love Van Pelt. I do. I think he's a good coach. But you know what's really funny though? I gotta ask you about this real quick, and then we'll jump over to the Musgrave thing. Why all of a sudden is everybody?
Oh no! Oh, we had a solid 30 minutes and about 20 seconds.
Here's my thing with this internet. I had a really good line there, and it just threw it out the window. And I'm pretty pissed off about this.
I gotta hear it.
So I'll try it.
He freezes again.
We will recapture some of the magic here.
Okay, here we go.
All season,
They really don't want Jacob to ask this question. They really don't. I feel the frustration building over there. This is like flashbacks to the early days of the Barking Brown show.
Well, the early days, even when I was able to talk, I was frozen. So
yeah.
it's.
And you know what? Just filling in the gaps here. Jacob's internet, for the by and large, since he has relocated, has been awesome. He's had no issues. It's like no big deal. And then all of a sudden, like the last 3 episodes, oh, you're back now, Jacob. The last 3 episodes, all of a sudden the internet's just not cooperating. It's like trying to get everybody on the defense on the same page. It just wasn't happening. We tried our best, but just wasn't happening. Jacob, we keep getting you for like just a second, and then we lose you again. So that's okay. You know what? We've been doing this for 95 episodes now. We can make it work. Technical difficulties are part of the process.
I'm gonna put a hole in my ceiling and run a freaking hard line up here. It's just ridiculous. It's been doing this where periodically it decides to just disconnect and reconnect for like 30 seconds and it just does it like 5 or 6. Okay, so I was told that Kevin Stefanski was a poor play caller last year and that Alex Van Pelt was this genius that needed to be calling plays and everything would be suddenly better. And now after that, Van Pelt gets quarterback coach and everybody's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
I don't, you know what? I think so. Pre-show, Jacob and I were talking about this, and there is just a frustration level right now with where the Browns, with the Browns records, with analytics. Everyone's so tired. You know what? And no one would be tired of analytics if the Browns are winning, but there is such a frustration level with what this Browns staff is trying to do. I just think that there is going to be criticism no matter what they do at this until the wins happen, until they actually have success. I think no matter what happens, there's going to be people really just spouting it out of wherever.
I think, yeah, you're probably right. I think that they've really assembled a pretty good coaching staff. I think overall, again, I'm just a little disappointed. I'm not angry. I'm a little disappointed. We want to talk. Let's do Bill Musgrave as we move on. We're going to talk about kind of some coaching things here real quick. And then I think we can move on to Andrew Berry's presser after that, right? I think. So Musgrave is 55 years old, played in the NFL from 91, the year I was born, till 1998. Started. Well, this is interesting. Okay, this is hilarious. Never seen this before. I'm running you guys down through his coaching career. In 1997, he was the Oakland Raiders quarterback coach. Okay.
Oh.
And in 1998, he was on the Indianapolis Colts practice squad as a player.
Really?
And then he would get cut and go to Philly to be a coach in that same year in 98. So I think that's kind of, he was a safety, by the way, in case you guys were curious what he was. But that's interesting. So you're talking about 1997. This dude's been coaching primarily quarterbacks. Okay. So quarterback coach in Oakland, he goes to Philly as an offensive coordinator, goes to Carolina as the offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, goes to college to do coordinating, comes back for the Jacksonville to be a coordinator. Then he's the quarterbacks coach in Jacksonville, Washington, Atlanta. He's the assistant head coach in Atlanta, goes to Minnesota to be the offensive coordinator with Kevin Stefanski. So then he goes there to do that. He goes to Philly in 2014 as the quarterback's coach. He's Oakland's OC, quarterback coach again in Denver, the OC. And then he goes to Cal for the last 3 years as the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. And he comes here as the senior offensive assistant. And he played in 11 games in the NFL. He had 2 interceptions, one of which he returned for a touchdown. And he also he was a quarterback and not a safety. He threw for 402 yards and a touchdown and interception and 2 interceptions. I'm pretty stupid, just so you know. Yeah. But all I'm getting at, and if you really want to get a feel for Bill Musgrave, Corey Kennan over at Browns Wire did a really good deep dive. He did some there's a lot of tweets that he put out, but you can also see some of his work on our site, brownswire.usatoday.com. And he kind of highlighted that there's a lot of like quarterback, he did a lot of 11 personnel and a lot of shotgun runs, because people were like, oh, they're going to go back under center and use tight ends again. It's like, no, go watch what he did at Cal. You're going to see a ton of running out of the shotgun, which is what they need to do. And you're going to see a ton of 11 personnel, just one tight end on the field. And I think it's going to be great. The Bill Musgrave move for me just made me go, okay. Some people literally, I saw that one individual on Twitter, like going at everybody about how irate and how stupid this is and all this. And I'm like, I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I think, again, missed opportunity, but you just brought a person in. We wanted someone new, right? Someone that hasn't been in the room for the last 3 years. And he at least checks that box. And you can go, okay, there's a little bit of a different perspective. There's a little bit of a different style of play calling. And the stuff that you've seen the last couple seasons with Cal, even though they have not had the players to make it look good, but the offensive schemes, those are similar to where you think this offense is going to evolve. So for me, it's fine. Good. I think it'll be all right. But overall, I think it's a good coaching staff.
I'm good with the hire. I would be lying if I told you I knew a whole lot about him when they announced it. But when you look at the Browns offseason so far, there is one reigning theme to me with these hires that they've made, and it is experience. Yeah. Jim Schwartz has been in the NFL forever. Bubba Ventrone has been a special teams coordinator, a proven one. And then you had Bill Musgrave, and he's got a ton of experience too. So it's definitely encouraging to me that they are shifting their philosophy to guys that have been there and done that before and been successul. So
they're just not running it back. They're trying different stuff.
Yeah. And that's important too, right? Because I would definitely, there were times during the early parts of the offseason, and especially as the playoffs were going on and the Browns weren't a part of them, that I was just like wondering, how do the Browns get to this level? Yeah. And I think a big part of it is just improving top to bottom. And so to me, guys who are proven, have coached at this high level. And you know what? The thing I keep going back to is that Schwartz wasn't fired in Philadelphia and Bubba Ventrone wasn't fired in Indianapolis. And I love that so much. I love getting guys that were secure and safe in their jobs. Obviously, Schwartz was in Tennessee last year, but I'm just pointing out that
you had to give both guys promotions to get him.
Yeah. Yes. And that is a very different a set of hirings than the Browns normally ever make. And certainly more than I'm ever used to. It's always guys who are inexperienced and fresh and unproven and that type of road you go down. Whereas like this is a very different set of hiring. And so to me, not trying to sip the Kool-Aid too far, although I am. We all know I'm going to sip the Kool-Aid. I'm really excited about that overall, where that's going.
They got me because it's like, hey, I think you should upgrade at DC. They did that. Oh, okay. I don't really like Mike Prefer. They upgraded that. I'm like, well, slap my ass and call me a cowboy. I'm in. So it is what it is. I want to make one side note before we move to the Andrew Berry thing, because I think the Andrew Berry thing will wrap up the show here. Every person for what's the word I'm looking for? Every person interviewed for the Browns DC job outside Denard Wilson is now a DC. We were told that Sean Desai was an ignorant interview. Well, the defending NFC champions just hired him as their defensive coordinator. And now we're looking at Denard Wilson as potentially being the Browns defensive This game coordinator, Jared Mueller over at Dogs by Nature, seems to bring that up. And Jared Mueller also asked a question about the age guardrails to try to see if Andrew Berry would answer it today. He would not. But spoiler, I sent him a message. I was like, I appreciate you, making an effort for it. And he's like, it was worth a shot. And I was like, yeah, I understand that. But just a side note about that. We're just a side note about that. Okay. So we're going to go into Andrew Berry's press conference here. I'm going to read you some of the questions and some of the answers that I thought were interesting. This is Drew brings it up in a very well eloquent place. Schwartz and Musgrave don't walk through the door if they think Stefanski is a lame duck coach. Neither does Bubba Ventrone, who wants to be a head coach. That is well known that Ventrone wants to make his way up to being a head coach. He gets the associate head coach. People are like, oh yeah, so that he can be the interim. Nobody goes somewhere thinking, yeah, I could be the interim head coach this year.
That's not,
unless you're like Triple G or something like that. But listen, Triple G just living his best life in the XFL.
Good for him.
Just living his best life. So there is the first thing they did ask him about the John Johnson thing to confirm it. He did. Okay. He said, I will start by saying, John, the first thought probably is just gratitude in terms of what he has done the past 2 years on the field and in the locker room. After just looking at the roster and thinking about what we want in 2023, we thought it would be the best move for the organization to really part ways. That certainly didn't minimize what John was able to do while he was with our team. So just some confirmation there, just him kind of, hey, I confirm that. They tried to ask him if they were going to, what are you going to do with his role, a young or a veteran player? And he was just like, I don't know, man. Like, it doesn't really begin until March. It's basically what he said. Like, he was like, we can't really, our off season with additions and stuff doesn't really happen to March, even though some radio hosts thinks that they don't have any sense of urgency, even though they can't do nothing. Okay. On how to create the desired cap space for 2023, because I think this is a hot button issue, hot button topic. This is what Andrew Berry said. It's a good question. Really, we look at kind of two different mechanisms. We look at the cash that we want to spend, and then the cap is really an accounting mechanism for that. Well, I like that. The rules are flexible, whether it is releasing a player, trading a player, restructuring a deal, or negotiating an extension. There are a number of different avenues to create cap space, and the approach we would take would really be dictated by the opportunities in front of us.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You know what? I think Andrew Berry is basically saying, the cap is a manipulatable number. And again, he's
Saints, saying there's like 5 ways I can do cap space. That's what he said.
Saints just restructured yet another player and are continuing to create cap space. I know their win-loss record wasn't what you want it to be, but if you just look at how they manage the cap, it's a fairy tale number over there.
There's gonna be a year the Saints are really gonna be screwed, though. It's coming. John Johnson did have a very classy tweet to say goodbye. You're right. Oh, I do. Right. March 13th. Yeah. Legal tampering is March 13th. And then March 15th is the official league year. But hell, we know all the big signings by the time it rolls around. This is really important here, because one thing that I was concerned with for a while, and then the dominoes kind of started to fall, was the lack of positional changes at the defensive coaching staff. The positional coaches on the defensive side of the ball, which clearly the Browns allowed these guys to go find other jobs so that they didn't have to get fired. They could just go take a job, and there was never this taintedness of being fired and things like that. I think there was always going to be some changes. So they asked him about Jim Schwartz's input on the Browns personnel department, as well as like the coaching staffs. Is we have always been a firm believer as a front office in partnering with our coaching staff. That has always been the case with Kevin, and that will always be the case with our coordinators. At the end of the day, we want to make sure we are able to map personnel strengths and skill sets to the offensive, defensive, and or kicking game philosophy. This will be no different with Jim. It certainly does help having worked with Jim before and have some level of familiarity. They worked together in Philadelphia. I have a pretty good sense of what he wants in different parts of the defense. That will always be the case with our coaching staff. There was, yeah. So he very much, yes, Jim Schwartz has some input. He had some input on the coaching staff changes. He is going to have some input on getting his players. What I think we have always looked for is alignment, and we have it. And we've now had it for 4 years. So this is our best shot. This is our best shot. Let's see. What did I have? Oh, here's my favorite question. On most of the Browns' top picks being under his leadership being 23 years old or younger, and if that will be a guardrail in 23, Jared Mueller asked him. He said, I feel like I have heard this term guardrail a number of years now, and then he laughed. To be honest, I think perhaps more is made of the age considerations that maybe how we actually think about it. We really do try and treat each prospect on the individual merits of their career. I am not going to suggest that that is not part of the equation for certain players, but just because a player is older coming out does not necessarily mean they have a lower ceiling. And likewise, just because the player is younger coming out doesn't necessarily mean they have more potential. We really try to make the consideration on an individual basis. Who knows? Maybe that will change this upcoming year. We've asked that. Is that going to change? Is there going to be some shifts in defensive in free agency and drafting philosophies based on some of the negative results that they've had in the last couple of years, team-wise? And I think he's kind of telling you that. He's kind of pointing this out. Yeah, I think we could do, yeah, we could kind of do that.
There's nothing that speaks more loudly about why I'm glad Andrew Berry values age so much than the fact that Deshaun Watson is currently 27 years old. I think he's played 6 NFL seasons now. If I'm correct, I want to say he's played 6 NFL seasons. It might be 5. Regardless, Kenny Pickett is 24 years old. He is coming off of his rookie season. That is a chasm of a difference of NFL experience by the time. And I understand that they are 3 years apart. But my point is, when you're drafting young players, like obviously, David Njoku is a really good example. I think a lot of us are really high on David Njoku, and it didn't happen immediately, but he's still young enough because they drafted him so young. And I know Andrew Berry didn't do that, but he was part of the staff that did. So my point is, I'm really glad that the Browns prioritize that. And I think that a lot of teams are going to follow suit as this type of thinking continues to prevail in the NFL.
Another one asked about Nick Harris. This was an interesting question. He was asked if Nick Harris will be the 2023 starter, given he is currently the only position on the roster only player on the roster at the position. Technically, Dawson Deaton is too. That is to be determined, quite honestly. I think there is a lot of work to do on the roster. We're sitting here on the last day of February, and there's a lot of that needs to be done until we get to August and we are competing for roster spots. They're going to try to get Posick back. I think they're going to try really hard. So. He mentions, that it's on the table that they could restructure Deshaun Watson. They're going to restructure Deshaun Watson.
And that, so that was really important to me because there were a weird amount of people that acted like Deshaun Watson restructuring his contract was lunacy, and I never understood.
He's still going to get the money. It's just how he gets it.
Yeah, and Deshaun knows that the team around him gets better if he agrees to restructure. So why would he not do that? It never made any sense that like the people that were like, "Oh, Deshaun's not going to restructure. The Browns are screwed. The Browns are in cap hell." Just more of that nonsense that when you really look at the nuts and bolts, it's completely inaccurate.
They asked him about his front office structure, and he said he is modeling his front office structure after what he saw Howie Roseman do in Philadelphia. So that's something we've talked about a million times, was his time in Philadelphia. And I think Howie Roseman's probably the best in the business, at least one of the best in the business. And he's like, yeah, man, like this is how they did it. And I'm trying to structure this stuff very similar to the way that, Howie does his stuff over there, whether he'll be able to do it to that level or not. We're still trying to figure that out. But I think that was a very important conversation that he had. He would not answer the question about if Watson's contract is affecting Lamar Jackson's negotiations. He said, ask another team. I think that's interesting. They also asked him if he thought that the contract would force other teams to give similar deals, and he said that he doesn't have a crystal ball for that, to be honest. So, yeah, that's yeah. But no, I thought it was a very interesting situation because I don't take a ton of things from these press conferences. A lot of times I don't even really watch them or listen to them. I do some reading and I try to get myself caught up because I think in this situation anyway, it's the first time they've talked publicly in like 6 weeks. And Stefanski will speak tomorrow. So on Wednesday, depending on when you're listening to this. But I don't know. I thought there was some good stuff in there. I think that this offseason has been, at first, like Joe Woods gets fired right away.
Yep.
And you're like, okay. And then you had like a week or so, and then they had Schwartz. And then it just kind of died. And then they made some changes, and Jeff Howard leaves and Chris Kiffin leaves, and you're seeing something, you're like, oh, and then they bring in, I can't remember his name, is the safeties coach, and they bring in, Musgrave, and they moving some things around. You're like, what are we going to do now? There's Denard Wilson may come to Cleveland as the pass game coordinator, some things. I guess offseason might be a little bit more fun than we thought it was going to be. So. Not that we didn't think it was going to be at all. There's some interest in Jesse Bates. There's some other big names. I don't know. Now there's this rumors out there about, are they going to try to get Hopkins? I just don't know how they make it work. Not that I wouldn't do it. I just don't know how they make it work. But buckle up. I think you should buckle up.
You know what? What I did see from Andrew Berry's comments that excited me was that he talked about having a sense of urgency entering free agency. And I think we have seen, they haven't all worked out, but Andrew Berry has always been aggressive. Always, every free agency that he has been here at the Cleveland Browns, always been aggressive. I think, obviously they're cutting John Johnson. They're going to have some more cap space. There's going to be room to work there. And I do think the Deshaun Watson restructure will happen. I think the fact that Andrew Berry even acknowledged it is a really good sign for the likelihood of that occurring. So then all of a sudden you're sitting on quite a bit. And I saw the report today that George Patton said that Draymond Jones is going to test free agency, the defensive tackle for the Broncos. And
defensive tackle, defensive end. He's like Draymond Jones is a lot of fun because he can do both positions, and the Browns love players that can do that.
Yes, they do. You know what? If there was a free agency match for me, seeing that, because there was initially reports that he might not make it out of Denver. And so the fact that he is going to test free agency is really encouraging to me, because I think I was listening to some talk this morning about how your best bet is to add veterans on the defensive line and to continue to draft in the secondary. And I thought that was interesting. And I do think, overwhelmingly the Browns have youth on the defensive line. So it probably makes a lot of sense to target somebody that's been there and done that in free agency to help.
26.
Okay. Yeah. So that seems good to me.
Hey, question for you. Where is Draymond Jones from?
Where is he from?
I'm not sure. January. Well, let's see. Okay. So he went to Ohio State.
Did he really?
And on January 5th, 1997, he was born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Third round pick in 2017.
You're giving me tweet ammo. I mean, if the Browns.
I didn't know. I knew he went to Ohio State. I did not know he was from Cleveland until I was looking. I just wanted to look up some of his numbers real quick because he's undersized at like 280. So he has more. He's played more. He was defensive tackle as a rookie, but he has played more defensive end than he has tackle lately.
Okay.
But I mean, you're looking at him in it. He only plays in 13 games this past year before going on injured reserve. But you got the last 3 years, 6.5 sacks, 5.5 sacks, and 6.5 sacks. And then his rookie year, he had 3.5.
Okay.
I mean, you're talking about a dude in 4 years playing inside outside. He has 22 sacks in his career. A couple forced fumbles in there.
I'd like that. I mean, I just think
interception as a defensive tackle. That was cool.
All right. That could make a lot of sense. I do have one free agency prediction I would like to put here and say
Are you trying to make receipts? Is that what you're doing here?
Well, I guess so. I was just thinking about it, right? And so I do think Jacoby Brissett has earned himself a starting role in the NFL.
Yeah.
So that begs the question of who the backup quarterback will be for the Cleveland Browns. And I think it will be none other than 29-year-old Marcus Mariota. Welcome to Cleveland. I think it isn't sexy, but he was better than Carson Wentz was, who also got cut. And when you're looking at the free agent pool of quarterbacks, they tried to give Mariota a starting job. Obviously, that didn't work, so he'll probably be willing to. I mean, I assume he'll be willing to accept a backup role now to keep going in the NFL. I think he wasn't perfect, but it's definitely somebody that at least could be serviceable, I think, in the Browns offense.
It's funny because I don't know how realistic it is, but when he was released, I did think about tweeting that he was an intriguing option.
Really?
Yeah, I did. I did. That's why I thought it was funny that you brought it up, because I was kind of like, yeah, I thought, and I never did because I was busy today, but I was also just kind of mulling it over. You know what I mean? Like, I think and Drew brings it up. I think it is still Kellen Mond. I think Kellen Mond,
Okay.
but I think Kellen Mond gets competition. And I think Mariota, I mean, I think a veteran minimum deal, he comes into camp and maybe he looks, because he can do, Kellen Mond can do a lot of those things too, but like, I don't know. I think it's Kellen Mond because of the way they went about getting Kellen Mond and kept keeping him on the roster. But I did think about it, and I don't hate it. So I will say that I'm like, maybe not, but like, I'm not going to say no. I'm not slamming the door there, because like, I'm a known Marcus Mariota lover. So
really?
yeah, it was big. I still was so shocked because I thought vehemently that Tennessee was trading out of that pick when he goes number 2 behind Jameis. And then I'm sitting there, I remember watching it, and they were like, and then they said the pick is in, and it wasn't a trade. And I was like, oh, and then I was like, I wonder who they're going to go with, because I just thought they were going to trade out of there so bad that I didn't even have a prediction for what they would do if they kept it. And they kept it, and they were like, Marcus Mariota. And I was like, let's go. I'm like, let's do this. This is great. Yeah, I'll say this as we wrap these things up. I appreciate every single one of you. I have been here. Well, it's been a couple of months now for me at Browns Wire. We have been wildly, I think, successful. I think I've written a lot of articles, and people that I've not been on Twitter as much. So if you want to hear my musings, I write multiple articles every day over at Browns Wire. So you can go check that out. I have a really awesome mock draft that I did, in which we get Elijah Moore with pick 98. Send it over there. And I really enjoyed it. And I traded back. I still got Felix, and I was like, what are we doing? And then I got Keanu Benton in the third round. It was just like, it's like, I got out of day 2 of the draft in this mock simulator where on PFF, because you can trade picks for players, you can trade for players in the mock simulator. And I was like, I just walked out of day 2 of the NFL draft with Elijah Moore, Felix Uzama, and Keanu Benton. And then I got Tank Bigsby, the running back from Auburn, and Dorian Williams, the linebacker from Tulane. And I'm just like, go check that out. I got all kinds of things. I'm going to write up tonight 3 free agent safeties that could replace John Johnson in 2023. Okay. So most valuable thing you can give people some of your time. I appreciate you guys giving some of yours again to us like you do each and every week. So I'm truly blessed to be able to continue to do this.
I just want to say that I saw we are at 1.03K subscribers.
Might even be higher. Let's see
on YouTube now, and it's really seemed to start to pick up. And I think that everybody sitting in this stream currently is a big part of the reason why, because you guys have been here the whole time. We've got Drew and MC both have been talking this entire time, and you guys are here. And I saw Mitch Metz was here. And just the guys that have been with us the whole time, and to everybody who takes the time to be on this journey with us. And I'm so excited about where all of this is going. And you know what, we're on episode 95 now. And like we alluded to, we will be doing something special for episode 100 for all of you that you know have been here this long. And I want to say just personally, I did tease the Cavs video content, and my first video, it's just a little reaction to the win and a little preview with over for Boston on Wednesday. Big matchup there. That's going to release tomorrow morning. And so I'm excited to continue. And as we move through too, because I know the Cavs season is kind of getting to the back end, and we're going to do the playoffs. We're going to do all that fun stuff. But then I think after that, we'll do some Guardian stuff as well. The goal is really to just Cleveland sports never stops. And so we are going to never stop with it. And so as long as you want it, we will keep creating. So thank you to everybody for.
Have you ever seen the Lonely Island movie where they do the spoof of like boy bands and stuff, and it's Pop Star Never Stop Never Stopping, and that's like my favorite title of all time.
I haven't seen it, but I'm gonna have to go look it up now.
I'll show you.
Okay. All right.
Get us out of here, friend.
Yeah, I was gonna say. With that said, which by the way, I think I'm gonna think next week it's gonna be buzzed head, no beard anymore. We'll see. But anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you that. Anyway, this has been episode 95 of the Barking Brown Show. I'm Nick. He's Jacob. Go Browns.
I like tapioca pudding.